All right. So the book that we're going to talk about today is called as The Compound Effect. The Compound Effect is a book authored by Darren Hardy. So before we understand more about the book and what insights can we take from the book, let's get to understand the author and some snippets from the book, and then we will get down to understanding insights that you can pick and put to use in your context. So, The Compound Effect, written by Darren Hardy. Who is Darren Hardy? Darren Hardy has been in the success industry for over 25 years now. And apart from this, he has interviewed super achievers from diverse fields of excellence. So he is a known personality in the success industry. And apart from this, what you'll also get to see in the book is that he has summarized his conversations with various people and also put that as several formula for us to apply, which I think is beautiful. He has also mentored more than 1,000 people who are entrepreneurs and businessmen and people who want to be successful in business as well. Apart from this, he himself is on the board of several organizations and NGOs. So, very, very super successful personality. About the book in a nutshell, the book was earlier published in 2010, 2020 by Folio Literary Management. In India, it's Manjul Publishing House, who are the publishers. It's a non-fiction book, but yet it's a great page turner. And the reason for that is that it's a small book, around 158 pages, which means you can breeze through the book. Even if you've got a few hours up your sleeve, this is a book you may want to pick up. And it talks about personal excellence, personal development, and several dimensions associated with that. So without any further ado, let's get to understand what does the book talk about. The book has been divided in 6 chapters. The first chapter is what we call as the compound effect in action. Now just take a couple of moments to focus on the image in front of you. And what does the image talk about? It says that if you pick up any habit, and apply that over a period of time, that could make a huge difference given the fact that you've been doing it consistently over a period of time. And the first formula that the author talks about is that small yet smart choices, which have been put to use consistently over a period of time, can yield remarkable results, which means it can bring about a radical difference in the way you achieve things in life. And this is something which we get to see throughout the book, where he talks about several examples and quotes several personalities as to how they brought about change in their life. Okay, so moving forward, chapter 2 talks about choices, because one of the important things in that formula that you saw earlier is the choices that you make. So compound effect means over a period of time, anything that you've been doing yields great results, but it starts with the kind of choices that you make in your career. And this is one of the statements which I loved mentioned in the book. It says, you make your choices and then your choices make you. So whether it is going for the right food or whether it is going for the right kind of exercise, joining the right institution, the right organization, whatever it is that you do, the choices that you make in your career, in your life, define you and make you the person you ultimately become. So it's all about choices that is important. And here's a beautiful example that he explains with the help of a cup of coffee. Now, we all love to have a cup of tea, coffee. Most of us, I'm not sure about you, but most of us do enjoy that. But the fact is, if you are into the habit of going for an extra premium cup of coffee, which some people might prefer, he says, even if you end up spending $4 for a cup of coffee a day, over a span of 20 years, you end up spending $51,834 for that. Now, that's a lot of money to spend on a cup of coffee, although it is for a span of 20 years. The point it's trying to make is not that we should not drink coffee, but the fact that whether it is worth spending such an amount on a cup of coffee on a day-to-day basis. And the fact that if you continue to do that, it can actually cost you a lot of money. So the choices that you make, right from a cup of tea or coffee to anything and everything in your life, will have a bearing on the outcome of your life. So that's an excellent example of uses. Now, talking more about habits, which is the third chapter in the book, he talks about the fact that when you make choices, which is the decision that you take, and complement that with the behavior, and you also exercise the right habits, which is repeated behavior. So if you do it once, it's behavior, but when you do it repeatedly, it becomes like a habit. The subconscious mind knows it. You do it over and over and over and over. Okay. And that you compound that over a period of time, which could be 10, 15, 20 years, then you achieve your goals. For example, to look at it from an investment perspective, if you save money and invest that and decide to invest that in a particular organization or in a particular stock over a period of time, if you do that repeatedly each week, each month, let's say for 15, 20 years, then possibly you'll end up becoming a millionaire, provided you've made the right decision to invest in the right organization or in the right stock to start with. But the fact is, you have to do it consistently, no matter how small the investment might look to begin with. And that is a great thing to look at it. Now, he also gives an example of a pilot who takes off, let's say, from a location like Los Angeles, and he aspires to land at New York. Now, what he says is that if there is a 1% deviation in the course, in the path that the pilot takes, then perhaps the pilot may end up either in Albany or in Delaware, which is a completely different city. So a small deviation in your path could mean that you end up being somewhere that you didn't aspire to be in. So following the right path is very, very, very crucial. And that is where your habits become mighty important. And this figure actually sums that up beautifully. And to carry forward what he says earlier, he talks about momentum in chapter 4. So momentum is whenever you start something, does that gather speed? Does that gather pace? For example, if you are about to get some water, if you want to pump some water from a hand pump, the initial few efforts that you put in will not yield you anything. Perhaps maybe a few drops of water if you're lucky enough. It is only when you continue to do it for the next few seconds and the next few seconds, you get a steady stream of water oozing through the hand pump. And that is when you have gathered momentum. It's like this, even when you are in a train, the first few moments as the train starts, it is still gathering pace. But once the train gathers pace, it is running at top speed. That also happens to what we do in our life. A lot of times when we put in efforts initially, we may not be able to see the kind of results that we're anticipating. And this is where a lot of people also tend to give up because they're not able to see the kind of results that they wanted. They might only see a few drops of water rather than the steady stream of water. But this is where it will actually begin to gather momentum. You have to persist, you have to be patient, and that's what makes all the difference. And that's the statement that he uses. If you continue to pump, it doesn't take long before you get a full and steady stream of water. That's when you have success. But momentum happens when you stay consistent in your efforts throughout. And then comes chapter 5, which I think is a beautiful chapter where he talks not just about who you are as a person, but the people around you, the association that you form. And he talks about three important things. He first talks about input, which means whatever you feed your mind, that's how your mind learns and that's how your mind produces. So, for example, he uses the term garbage in, garbage out. If you feed your mind with garbage, that is perhaps what you'll get. But if you feed your mind with nourishment, then that's what you will eventually get, which means what you read, what you see, what you hear, all of that is going right into your mind. And therefore, to put the right things in your mind, it's important that you feed your mind with the appropriate things. So he actually talks about the fact that we also need to cut down the amount of information consumption that we do on a day-to-day basis, because most of that is just to create panic, right? It feeds on our fear. So be very, very cautious about what you want to feed your mind. Secondly, as I said, he talks about associations. He talks about the fact that when you're on a path of excellence, be very, very watchful who you are with you on that journey. It means the association that you carry. As they say, a man or a woman is known by the company he or she keeps. Therefore, the people that you spend maximum time with will have a definite impact on who you turn out to be eventually. So be very watchful about your own company. When I say company, people around you, it could be your friends, your colleagues, Sometimes you don't have a choice, but in most cases, you do have a choice. Again, goes back to the previous chapter, which is on choice, that you have to exercise the right choice about the kind of people whom you want to hang out with, because that is who ultimately you would become. And thirdly, the surroundings, the kind of environment that you expose yourself to. So if the environment is optimistic, positive, it becomes that much more easier for you to take the right decisions and become a better person. So again, be watchful about the kind of environment that you're exposing yourself to, because environment also has an impact on how we think. And that's why even in organizations, we often talk about creating congenial environment for people so that they can perform better, they can sustain and gather momentum, and ultimately get the results that we want them to get. So that is what he talks about in the chapter called influence, because we human beings will get influenced by things and people around us. So be very wise about that. And last but not the least, he talks about acceleration. What is acceleration? So we spoke about momentum earlier, but only momentum is not sufficient. We need to ensure that we get on to the next gear and the next gear and the top gear eventually. So for that, he speaks about two specific things that one would like to do and should do. One is do better than expected, which means if you're serving a client, whatever the client's expectation are, can you do slightly better than that? Or for example, even in relationships, can you go slightly beyond what is expected of you? So doing slightly more than what is expected is a great way of giving your success a great push, right? And the other thing is to try and do what is unexpected, what people don't expect you to do. But when you create that, you create miracles. You create a zone wherein people look at you as an individual who will go beyond the call of duty in order to produce results. And it is true not just for individuals, but for teams as well as for organizations. So do better than expected and try to do the unexpected. That is where excellence truly lies. So these are the 6 chapters that the book talks about. I think each of the chapters is fascinating, filled with a lot of anecdotes, analogies, stories that you can correlate with. So a couple of things to look at. Who should read this book? Well, I think any book can be read by anyone. But if you're specifically looking at gaining more success in your career, in your life at this stage, then this might be a good read for you because, as I said, it's only 150 odd pages. The second person or a category of people who may want to pick up this book are someone who want to either learn new habits or acquire good habits, or you may want to drop or eradicate some of your bad habits. How do you do that is also something that you'll find on the pages of this book. But most importantly, if you're trying to build a life of discipline, which often is a negative term for a lot of people, discipline, because it means you're punishing yourself, you're being harsh on yourself, but that's not true. This book actually tells you how can you acquire that discipline. What are some of the simple, small things that you can do consistently over a period of time so that you can help yourself gather momentum, develop acceleration, and make the right choices that will lead you to success. So in all ways, this is a great book that you may want to pick up. Now, the question is, how should you read this book? Now, I'm always fascinated by how should you read any book for that matter, because I think every book has its own way of reading and the information that needs to be consumed from that. So there is a beautiful thing that the author has done. After every chapter, he gives you what is called as the summary action steps, because the author wants you to apply anything that you learn. So after every chapter, just look at the summary action steps. Maybe it's a good idea to pen down what are your thoughts about it. Are there 1 or 2 things that you may want to try in your context to get a better result? So summary action steps is the most useful part that I found in the entire book. Again, visit one chapter at a time for better impact. And I would suggest stick to the same chronology or sequence of reading the book. Do not pick up anything from the middle because you might not get the rhythm of the book. So you might want to read the book in the same sequence as the chapters are kept in the book. You may also want to highlight certain important sections and revisit those sections later, perhaps once you've done the breeze reading, so that you could then think over it at a deeper level. Plus, one of the other things you can use from the book is the resources section. So you can actually visit the website, thecompoundeffect.com/resources. And there are a lot of resources that you can pick up, which you can easily put to use. So these are all freely available on the website. You can get the benefit of using these resources so that you can actually put the book into implementation mode, right? So that's another fascinating thing about the book. A lot of people, a lot of authors who have written books, a lot of motivational speakers, as well as people who are coaches, have praised this book, right from Jack Canfield to John Maxwell to Brian Tracy and several others. So if you trust any of these names, then this is also something for you to think about. Last but not the least, there is a statement that just stuck with me, and the statement says, learning without execution is useless. How true is that? A lot of times we do learn things, but we don't put them into implementation mode. This book makes it very clear that unless you put to use what you've learned, you haven't learned anything. Okay. So go back, apply this in your context, and see small yet meaningful miracles take place in your life. I wish you all the very best and an enjoyable time reading The Compound Effect.